Hello, dear students. Today I am going to tell you a story named Mulla Nasreddin and the Nail. But before we proceed, let me ask you a question. Why do you love Birbal? I'm sure you have all read or listened to the stories of Akbar and Birbal, right? So, what is it so special about Birbal? Definitely, that's his wit and wisdom and his presence of mind. Children, Mulla Nasreddin was one person who resembled Birbal when it comes to wisdom, smartness, and presence of mind. Mulla Nasreddin was a wise man and a sage. He spent lot of time devoting to Allah, that is the God he worshipped. And because he spent so much of time in his religious pursuit, in the religious activities, that he hardly cared about his material things and his monetary possessions. And that's why he went into debt. What is debt? When we borrow money from people or money lenders and we are not able to repay that. So Mullah Nasruddin's condition was that his financial condition was deteriorating, means becoming worse and worse with each passing day. Now he had a neighbor who was a crooked man. Crooked man in the sense, uh, a kind of man who did not follow the right things. He was not a just man, a man who would abide by law and justice. And this crooked neighbor, he tried to take advantage of Mullah Nasreddin's poor financial condition. He knew that Mullah Nasreddin was suffering from lack of money and he was in debt. And so he offered him, the neighbor offered Mullah Nasreddin that he would buy Nasreddin's house, but at amount which was quite less, for half the price of the house. Now we already know that Mullah Nasreddin was in need of money, so he agreed to the offer, but on one condition. Mullah Nasreddin said to his neighbor that he was willing to sell his house even on half price, provided they would allow him to have possession of one single nail. Nail means kati. According to Mullah Nasreddin, this nail was hammered into the wall of the house by his father. And because his father is dead now, so he has great reverence, great respect for that nail. So he would sell the house to the neighbor on a condition that the neighbor would allow Mullah Nasreddin, to do whatever he wanted with the nail. The neighbor said that he would discuss about the contract with his wife. Now the neighbor's wife was reluctant and she had serious objections that if the house is being sold, why would he want to keep possession of a nail? But the neighbor was able to convince his wife. He said that, see, we are anyways in a profitable condition. We are getting the house for half its price. So let him have the nail for himself. It's not going to be an obstacle anyways. And thus the house was sold to the neighbors and they moved into the house. For some time, around 2 weeks, Mullah Nasreddin was not seen around. And then one day, there was a loud knock on the house and the neighbor opened the door and he found Nasreddin standing at the door. Nasreddin said that he had come to worship his nail. The neighbor had no objection. He allowed the man to come in and Mullah Nasreddin bowed before the nail, worshipped the nail. But before leaving, he hung his turban turban, the cloth, the headgear that is worn on the head. So he hung the turban on the nail and went away. Next, when he came back after some days, he again worshipped the nail. The neighbor thought that Mullah has come back to take away the turban that he had hung on the nail. But Mullah said that I have no such intentions. He rather hung a scarf on the nail and he went away. Once more, he returned. This time, the neighbor was not happy. The wife also had serious objections. Nonetheless, he came to the house, he entered, he worshipped the nail, and along with the turban and the scarf, he hung his coat and went away. Now the wife was really, really angry, and kind of she kind of scolded her husband that what's going on? This is not agreeable. I don't want the man in the house. It's becoming intolerable. The husband said he tried to pacify his wife and said that, anyways, the nail is full. He cannot hang any more thing on the nail. So let's not worry about it. But it was not the case. Mullah returned, and this time he returned with a sack full of cow dung. And this was too much to bear. The moment he entered, the moment the neighbor opened the door and found Mulla Nasreddin standing at the door, he tried to shoo him away and he tried to lock the door of the house. But Mulla Nasreddin was smarter enough, he had already placed a foot inside the house. Nobody could stop him from worshipping the nail that he had the ownership of. But when the neighbor and his wife saw him dragging in a sack full of cow dung, naturally they were disgusted and they did not want such filthy thing inside the house. And then the neighbor objected and said that this is going too far, we cannot allow you to do so. Whereas Mullah said he had all the rights to treat the nail the way he wanted. Now they had an argument over it, and then it was decided that the case should go to some elderly wise men. And so it was that a council was set up and both the parties had their case put up. The neighbor spoke everything, told everything what Mulla Nasreddin had been doing in the past. But when it was the turn of Mulla to speak, he did not utter a word. He just produced the contract that they had signed on a piece of paper. The wise men studied the terms and conditions of the contract signed by both Mulla Nasreddin and the neighbor. And they found that indeed the contract said that Mulla Nasreddin had all the rights to worship the nail and to treat it the way he had wanted. So, according to the contract, although the house belonged to the neighbors now, the nail was under the possession, under the ownership of Mulla Nasreddin, and nothing could prevent him from worshipping his nail. The neighbor was dejected. Dejected means he felt hopeless and he felt sad, but there was nothing that he could do. There were days of quarrel between the neighbor and his wife, and the poor neighbor spent sleepless nights. He could not tolerate it anymore, and at last he requested Mulla Nasreddin to buy back the house at a pitiful price. Mulla Nasreddin happily accepted the offer and he bought the house back even at a lesser amount than what he had sold. And thus he not just got his house back, he also made a tidy sum of money. And that is how Mullah Nasreddin not just cleared his debt but also taught his crooked neighbor a lesson for life. So now, at the end of the story, let us take a look or revise the chapter. So that's the main character, Mullah Nasreddin, the protagonist of the story, who was a sage, a mysterious man, and he was in debt. Debt means cards. He borrowed money but was not able to return. So he had a neighbor, a crooked man, and he tried to take advantage of Mullah Nasreddin's poor financial condition. So when he offered to purchase Mullah Nasreddin's house, they signed a contract, and according to the contract, Mullah Nasreddin would be allowed ownership of a nail. Now this nail was hammered on the wall of the house by Mullah Nasreddin's father, and that's why he says that he respected the nail. The wife was not happy about it. She was reluctant about the contract. She had objections to the contract, but finally she agreed, and the house was sold to the neighbors, and the neighbors moved into the house. For some time, Mullah Nasreddin was nowhere, but he came back, and first he worshipped the nail and hung his turban on it. Again he returned and worshipped the nail, and after worshipping the nail, he hung his scarf. Later again he came back, and then he hung his overcoat, and finally one day he came to the house with a sack full of cow dung. Now here the neighbor and Mullah Nasreddin had a huge argument, and they decided that this case should be brought to a council of wise men. Now when the case was in proceeding, the council of wise men saw the contract, and then decision was taken in favor of Mullah Nasreddin. The neighbor had to sell the house back to Nasreddin at even a lower price, and this is how Mullah Nasreddin was able to come back to his house.